Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, today at 1 p.m. Pacific time, the Raiders must have their roster trimmed down to 53 men, so we'll do our best job to try to do the same. Trim the roster down to 53 men. You know it's guaranteed to be wrong, but we're going to attempt it anyway. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for August 29th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
Welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we appreciate you in a major way. We appreciate my man Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. We definitely appreciate him. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Those calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. In segment number 2, as I mentioned, the 53-man roster has to be set. At least the initial 53-man roster has to be set by 1 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to go through, try to do it as quickly as possible since it's a pretty lengthy process. Try to get the roster down to 53 men, and, well, it's guaranteed to be wrong. But kind of give a good explanation, knowing that a lot of the guys that are going to be released will probably end up on the Raiders practice squad anyway, as you can have 16 guys on the practice squad now, a couple of veterans included. So I think a lot of guys that will be kind of on the roster bubble will end up getting released and then thrown on to the practice squad, and hopefully other teams don't go and poach them. So that's kind of the idea that you got to have is, okay, is this guy going to be picked up by another team, or is this a guy that if we stash on the practice squad, it'll be safe. He'll be safe on that spot, and somebody won't come get him. So it's kind of what has to go through Dave Ziegler and Champ Kelly and Josh McDaniels, Patrick Graham, all their minds as they're coming up with the 53-man roster, you know, who to keep, who not to keep, and why. So we'll do that ourselves, a little exercise in segment number 2. We'll do the best job that we can. Here in segment number 1, I'd like to hit you with the news and notes of the day. So we'll go ahead and jump into it after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Again, that's on Gametime. So first news and notes here in segment number 1. How about the 2023 NFL ranked, the top 100 player rankings prediction stats by ESPN? And it's funny, I never really take a whole lot when it comes to rankings, right? I never really worry about rankings, but after the NFL, PA, and the players, they went through and they did their top 100. And, of course, Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby, Devontae Adams were all on their list. I saw this ranking come out from ESPN on Monday and thought, you know what? I'll just go ahead and entertain myself. Why don't I just check it out? And I really wish I hadn't, because I looked at the Raiders rankings that are on there, same representation, Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, and Josh Jacobs. I just didn't understand why they were ranked, where they were ranked. And I realized I have to continue to remind myself, winning matters, Q. Winning matters, Q. Winning matters. And so if there's any explanation on why the Raiders are ranked as low as they are, it's all right there. It is winning. And it's not based off of what the players across the league are voting. It's also ESPN stats and information and predictions and whatnot. So there's that. So let's go ahead and just jump into it real quickly. And I'll give you the Raiders that are represented. I already mentioned is Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, and Josh Jacobs, but where they're represented. So Devontae Adams comes in at number 22. In 2022, he was ranked 10th, and they have a signature stat for each one of these players. So remember, Devontae Adams now ranked number 22 as opposed to 10th in 2022. And all he did is have 100 catches and 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2022. So I don't really know how he dropped 12 spots, but okay. Signature stats. Adams has 87 career receiving touchdowns, more than any other player since he made his NFL debut in 2014. Last season, he had 8 touchdown catches on passes 25-yard-plus downfield, which is the most in a season since ESPN began tracking air yards in 2006. So that's the Devontae Adams signature stat. Again, 87 career receiving touchdowns, more than any other player since he's been since his debut in 2014. But he dropped 12 spots. So there's that. Again, don't take it too much. Take it just kind of with a grain of salt. But it's just, to me, it's kind of funny where these guys are ranked. Max Crosby ranked 35th. And in 2022, he was ranked 67th. So, okay. So he climbs quite a bit, but still 67 seems a little low for Mad Max Crosby. But that's okay. Again, he went from 67 to 35, so that's cool. Signature stat. No player has pressured the quarterback more over the past 3 seasons than Crosby with 177. Not even Aaron Donald with 149. Crosby's 37.5 sacks are the most by a Raider through 66 career games since 1995. Think about that. Let me slow that one down for you. Crosby's 37.5 sacks are the most by a Raider through 66 career games since 1995. That would include one Khalil Mack. And that, to me, was one of those stats, and that's why that's a signature stat. I didn't even really realize that. So hats off to Max Crosby for continuing to grow and grind and be the guy that he is. And even though he was ranked a lot higher on the players poll, I think he was, 17th, and Devontae Adams was top 10. Anyway, he's ranked 35, and in 2022, he was 67. How about Josh Jacobs? He's ranked 65th, and in 2022, he wasn't even ranked. He wasn't even ranked, but he was coming off, a tough season in 2021, so I can understand why maybe he wasn't ranked in 2022, but to bounce back and lead the league in rushing and then rank 65th was kind of surprising. I thought he'd have been a little higher. His signature stat was pretty short and simple. Jacobs ran for 1,653 yards in 2022, the second most in a season in Raiders history. Marcus Allen had 1,759 in 1985. So there you go. That's the signature stat right there for Josh Jacobs. But I thought those were pretty interesting, so I thought I'd bring those to the table. I also wanted to let you hear my pregame interview that I had on Saturday, right before the Raiders played their preseason game number 3 against the Cowboys with Matt Millen. And the reason why I wanted to bring this conversation up is because he brought up some good points about the Raiders defense and really the linebackers in particular, and I thought that you would enjoy hearing this. So here's the conversation I had with Matt Millen on Saturday in the Raiders pregame show. What have you seen from this Raiders defense that looks like it's really going to look for the ball and hunt the ball so far this preseason?
Well, the biggest thing is they're practicing it all the time. I think that's one thing that gets lost in this. A lot of times the teams talk about, we have to turnovers, we have to do this, we have to do that, but then they don't ever practice it. So I think when you go to a Raider practice right now, you're seeing that all the time, grabbing the ball, trying to rip it out. I mean, the interceptions are a different story, but they're still working on it, and so I think it's a mindset.
Yeah, it really is, and I feel like they've been working on it for a while, as you mentioned, and now it's starting to translate. I know these are preseason games, but, I mean, again, you practice them in the preseason games, and you'll hopefully do them again in the regular season games. As far as just this defense and the competition that you're going to see out there on the field tonight in this third and final preseason game, it feels like Dave Ziegler's put together a really good 90-man roster. I think there's some guys battling for some jobs tonight, Matt. What are you seeing?
Oh, there's going to be a lot of battles for the jobs. So you're going to have you're going to have a battle at the backup defensive tackles. I like what John Jenkins has done, and I like Brian Young's just a young guy, so he's got to be able to step up. And so, I don't know how many they're keeping, but I do know that there's going to be a battle there. There's going to be a battle on the outside. I think Kuntz has been playing well this preseason. I think the backers. I thought Drake Thomas last week had a great game. Always around the football, good instincts. Was believing his eyes, didn't run around that many blocks. And then you got Bernie, and you got my favorite rookie on this defense, Jacorian Bennett. I watched him at Maryland. I had him a few games last year, and he's got it. And he's carried that over. The thing that I love about him, he's always asking questions, and he's always looking to get better, so I think that's a good sign.
It really is, and he's a guy that they're going to need, right? I mean, he's a guy that's got speed. He's a guy that can track the ball. I mean, he's going to be, a big-time addition, I believe, to this Raiders defense. But you mentioned Drake Thomas, and I was listening to the broadcast last week, and you were, talking about him and Curtis Bolton, as a matter of fact. Both those guys were flying around the ball. I know that Drake's a little undersized and Curtis is normally a special teamer, but just going back to last week, what did you see from those two guys in particular?
Well, the first thing that stands out is they have instincts. And instincts, you either have them or you don't have them. And you can really tell for a linebacker when guys are around the football all the time. Like they might get blocked for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you see them and they're around the play. They're around the ball. So I think when you have a guy who has that kind of instinct that he's always around the football, those guys are hard to keep away. And that's just one thing that you just have. There are other guys you could watch him and you say, he made like 5 plays. What did he do the other 60? Well, he made 5 plays. So it's a little bit different. I think Drake Thomas, he had 12 tackles, but he was probably in on about 20. So it's just one of those guys that bears watching more. If he's going to make this team, if you're going to look at him for that, you're going to want to see him in special teams because he's going to have to play special teams, and he's just going to have to, contribute in more than one way.
Matt Millen is our guest here on the Raiders pregame show. I just got a couple more questions for you. What about Robert Spillane? What have you seen him bring to this Raiders team?
Yeah, Spillane. Here's my one concern. Let's take Spillane out of this just for a second. But my only concern about this Raider defense is they're not very big at the second level, and so what that tells me is you got to get points to get on the board. You got to get on the board. You got to have points at your back because if they get up on you, they're going to pound the football. Now, this league isn't really a running game anymore. This league is a passing league. And having said that, you can have the defenders in front of you. You can stack them and you can do certain things. But when they start pounding the football and they're getting blocked up front, you got to have some lead in your drawers to be able to take that on. Now, having said that, I think Spillane has done fine. It's only 2 games.
Right.
He's hardly played very much. But I think here's what I look for in linebackers. Do you believe your eyes? Some guys do not believe what's happening in front of them. That's usually a matter of experience. And so he does. He believes his eyes. The other thing is you have to maintain discipline of scheme, especially as a backer. And you can't be running around blocks. And he's been pretty disciplined. So I like those parts of his game.
I like the lead in your drawers comment right there. I'm going to hold on to that one, Matt, if you don't mind. I'm going to use that myself a couple times if that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think last time I saw you, you need some lead in your drawers too. So.
Of course I do. Of course I do. Matt, thanks so much, man. Have a great call.
Right.
I appreciate you.
All right, take care of yourself.
There he goes. That's the great Matt Millen talking about some lead in my drawers. Right? If Matt Millen says you need some lead in your drawers, then damn it, you probably need some lead in your drawers. No, I thought that was a good conversation. Really found it interesting and intriguing what he had to say about the Raiders linebackers and the fact that their lack of size, right? And talk about teams could run downhill. And when the Cowboys were doing that in preseason game number 3, all I could think about is what Matt Millen was saying, that, at some point, these guys could decide that they want to run downhill on you. And with your lack of size, you're not going to be able to stop them. And the Raiders couldn't stop the Cowboys from running at all in preseason game number 3. And I know it was backups. It was third stringers and fourth stringers. I get that. But so was the Cowboys playing with third stringers and fourth stringers. So no matter who it was, right, the size is still the size when it comes to the Raiders linebacker room. So, again, I thought that was some good information from the great Matt Millen on the Raiders pregame show. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, we're going to do our best to go through the Raiders roster and make it 53 men. We're going to do it kind of quickly because it's a lengthy process, but we'll do the best we can, and we'll do it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. And if you've ever had family or friends come into town, or all of a sudden you realize there was a show that you wanted to go to and you needed to find tickets quick, fast, and in a hurry, well, the way to do it so you're not stressed out is Gametime. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 100%, 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy your tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, boom, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Right now, all you need to do if you need to snag the tickets without stress with Gametime is download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem code, promo code, whatever you want to call it is LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Going to do our very best real quick to come up with the 53-man roster for the Silver and Black. And I'll tell you, it's a very lengthy process. As I was trying to prep the show, I was going through it, and I came up with 54. And then I did it again, and I came up with 55. And I was like, wait, hold on. You're going the wrong direction. You can't keep putting guys on the roster. You got to release a couple guys. So finally came up with 53 men. It's guaranteed to be wrong, but this is the best that I could do. So we're going to go ahead and go through it. First of all, I want to go through real quickly the moves that the Raiders have already made. So when I get to these certain position groups, I might not mention these guys that are already gone from the team, and that's why, because, well, they've already been moved on from. Isaac Darkangelo, the linebacker, he was waived along with Isaiah Ike Brown, Doug Coughlin, Bryce Cosby, Chase Garbers, Vitaly Gurman, and Darwin Thompson. All those guys were waived. Then waived and injured the following player, Chris Lacey, wide receiver. And then placed the following players on the reserve injured list, Britton Brown, Jacob Hollister, and Isaiah Zuber. So all those guys are already accounted for and off the roster. So here we go. Let's go through this as quickly as possible. The guys that I feel like need explanation, I'll give the explanation for. Besides that, I'm just going to kind of go through it. Again, it's a pretty lengthy process. Quarterbacks, I think they keep 3. Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, and Aiden O'Connell. And really, I know a lot of people, including myself, look at Aiden O'Connell and say he could be a number 2 guy. But I think at first, at least early on in the season, I still think Brian Hoyer is still good to be kind of that coach on the field and help out Aiden O'Connell and kind of help develop him while Jimmy G gets ready for actual game action. At some point in the season, I do believe Aiden O'Connell will take over that number 2 spot. But initially, and this is what this is, initial 53-man roster, Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell in that order. Going to the running backs, I got them keeping 4 running backs, Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, Brandon Bolden, and Damian Williams. Those are the ones that no, I don't. False. False. I take that back. Jacobs, White, I have Bolden written down. That's not what I wanted. Jacobs, White, Damian Williams, and Abdullah. Sorry, I meant Abdullah because I have Sincere McCormick and Brandon Bolden released. See, that's how much it's such a difficult thing as I'm trying to write these notes down. I'm getting all these guys messed up. So the 4 running backs, Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, and Damian Williams. I have the Raiders releasing Sincere McCormick and Brandon Bolden. And look, I think that Damian Williams did a lot in that preseason game number 3 to show that he wanted a roster spot. Even though he only had 6 carries, he did the most with it. And that's what I was actually expecting. And I know some people thought I was extra critical of that preseason game number 3. I was expecting more effort that I saw from Damian Williams from more people on the Raiders roster as they were showing that they deserved that spot on the roster. So that's why I'm tipping the cap to Damian Williams. So we'll see how it shakes out, but that's who I have for the 4 running backs. 1 fullback, Jakob Johnson. That's the easiest one. That one was simple to me. Wide receivers, it gets a little tricky here. I have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, DeAndre Carter, Trey Tucker, and Cam Sims. Cam Sims made the cut over a guy like Christian Wilkerson and Keelan Cole and Philip Dorsett because of his size. That 6'5", you can't teach it. You can't teach speed. You can't teach size. Cam Sims has it. So you have Devontae Adams, which is the all-world wide receiver. You have Jacoby Myers, who just knows how to get open. Hunter Renfrow is the slot machine. No need to, even worry about him. DeAndre Carter and Trey Tucker have the speed, and Cam Sims has the size. It makes sense to me for them to keep those 6. So I have Christian Wilkerson released, Keelan Cole released, and Philip Dorsett released. And I think that it's really some competition between – I think Philip Dorsett, the staff really likes him, but I just don't see 3 guys with speed the same that provide basically the same thing. DeAndre Carter, Trey Tucker, and Philip Dorsett, I think that that's too much of the same thing. And then DeAndre Carter and Trey Tucker also provides the special teams game where Philip Dorsett doesn't. So that was the reasoning behind those decisions. Tight ends. This one's going to be one that I'm going to really monitor because I'm sure I'm wrong on this one, but I just feel some kind of way, so I'm going to roll with it. I have them keeping 3 tight ends, Michael Mayer, Cole Fotheringham, and Jesper Horsted. So I have them releasing Austin Hooper. They probably won't release Austin Hooper. I'm probably guaranteed to be wrong on this one, but I still don't like what I saw from him in the preseason. Just something bothers me with the drops. Something bothers me with the offensive pass interference by the goal line. I just think a guy that's been in the league as long as he has, he's got to know better than that. And especially putting the ball on the turf, man. Come on, catch the ball. You just, I don't know. I just didn't like the performance that Austin Hooper had, but I could definitely see him being, up there with Michael Mayer, be Michael Mayer, Austin Hooper, and either one of the 2, Fotheringham or Jesper Horsted. But right now, for my sake, Mayer, Fotheringham, and Horsted are the 3 tight ends that I have sticking on the roster. Offensive line, starting 5, Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, Andre James, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor. Those are the starting 5 I have. Backups, Thayer Munford, McClendon Curtis, Dalton Wagner and Netane Mute. So 2 undrafted free agents, Curtis and Wagner. I think that they like both of those guys. I've seen some people say McClendon makes it and Wagner gets cut, or Wagner makes it and Curtis gets cut. I think both those guys are going to make it. Munford, I think, is going to have a big role. And there's a good chance that he can end up taking that right tackle spot before it's all said and done. But I think they start the season off with Jermaine Illuminor at that right tackle spot. And I know they love Mute, what he brings to the table. So that's the 9 offensive line that I have them keeping. They're releasing Alex Bars, Hronis Grasu, Jordan Meredith, and Vitaly Gurman. Already talked about him earlier on in the show and earlier on in this segment. So the offensive line is a little tricky. It's pretty deep right now, but I think that that's the way that it shakes out right there with the guys that I mentioned. How about on the flip side? How about on the defensive line? Crosby, Tillery, Nichols, Jones, starters. No-brainers, right? No-brainer right there with those 4. Backups. And this is where I got a little – I didn't really like my decision here, not going to lie. Tyree Wilson, rookie. Byron Young, rookie. Matthew Butler, second-year guy. Neil Farrell Jr., second-year guy. Nesta J. Silvera, rookie. So I think there's too much youth there. I honestly think that somebody that I have released, I have Jordan Willis, Adam Plant, Isaac Rochelle, George Tarlas, Adam Butler, John Jenkins, and Malcolm Kuntz. One of those guys probably needs to be a backup instead of having all that youth, because you need somebody with some experience, and I know that. So I look at that and I say, man, I think that all those guys have a spot. Nesta J. Silvera, I put him on the roster. I was going to keep Malcolm Kuntz and then release Nesta J. Silvera and then put him on the practice squad, but I think that somebody will pick him up. I think he's done just enough that somebody will pick him up. So that's why I put him on the active roster, but I don't feel good about that. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't feel good about that. David Agoha, I put him on the practice squad immediately because he doesn't count against the practice squad. He's the international player, so that's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you keep him? So that's the defensive line and the defensive line group. Don't feel good about that, Raider Nation. I don't feel good about that, but that's just what I'm rolling with, so we'll see. Linebackers, Robert Spillane, Devon Diablo, Luke Masterson, Drake Thomas, and Amari Burney. It was tough. Curtis Bolton and Kanai Maga, those guys released. It was tough for me because I thought Curtis Bolton did some really good things, and I wanted to hold on to him. But I think that Drake Thomas is a guy that can make it happen. I think that this staff likes him. He's a little undersized. Actually, he's a lot undersized. All of them are, right? Masterson, Thomas, they're all undersized outside of Spillane. So I kind of wanted to keep Curtis Bolton, especially because he has good special teams, so that's another element of it. He's a special teams ace. So I probably would be smart to keep him somewhere, but I only have them keeping 5 linebackers, so that's why Curtis Bolton was released. How about the cornerback room? Marcus Peters, Nate Hobbs, Jacorian Bennett, boom. Those are the starters. I've been talking about those guys for a while. This was tough, though. Amik Robertson, Duke Shelley, and Tyler Hall are the 3 that I kept as well. So 6 guys total. I know some people have 5 cornerbacks. Some have 7. I kept 6. Peters, Hobbs, Bennett, Robertson, Duke Shelley, and Tyler Hall. I released Sam Webb, Brandon Faison, Azizi Hearn, and David Long Jr. And some people are pretty high on what David Long Jr. did, and I think he did some good things in training camp, but I didn't think he did some great things in actual game process. So that's why I released him. Brandon Faison's been injured most of training camp. Sam Webb was good. He was an undrafted free agent that made the team last year, so I thought that maybe he had a chance. And Azizi Hearn, I didn't think was good at all. So there's that. Sam Webb, he might be able to convert back to the practice squad and then maybe get called up at some point. Maybe Azizi Hearn can too, but he didn't look very good in game action at all. So those were the 6 corners that I kept, and those were the 4 that I released. Safeties, Marcus Epps, Trayvon Merritt, Chris Smith, and Isaiah Palomar. And I think I think you feel pretty good about that. I think the staff is really high on Isaiah. I really do. I mean, they liked him last year when they had him on the practice squad and they kept him around the team, and then he went and worked out and got bigger in the offseason. And I just think that he has some really good instincts, and a little bit longer with this staff and this coaching staff, I think he can really come along. So Epps, Merrick, Chris Smith, and Isaiah Palomar, I think that's going to be that's a nice little foursome as far as the safeties goes. Release Roderick Teamer, Jaquan Johnson, and Jaden Grant. Teamer was tough to release because similar to Curtis Bolton, he's a special teams ace, and you got to have those guys. So you got to have some other dudes step up. If you're going to release guys like Bolton and Teamer, that's you're hurting your special teams. Speaking of special teams, Carlson, AJ Cole, and Jacob Boben Moyer. So, yeah, those 3 are just no-brainers. And for anyone who is concerned about the long snapper, Jacob Boben Moyer, he looks like he's doing just fine. I mentioned it on Monday's show that Daniel Carlson is in midseason form. AJ Cole looks good. So it's the snap looks good. The hold looks good. The kick has been good. I think that trio is doing just fine as Boba Moyer is in there replacing Trent Sieg. So there you go. That's my 53-man roster. Originally, I had like 54 guys. Then I had 55 guys. Finally, I cut it down to 53. There's a bunch of guys in there that I'm not really 100% confident with. Not 100% confident in cutting Curtis Bolton. Not 100% confident in cutting Roderick Teamer. Not 100% confident in the defensive line room having so much youth and not having more veterans. Don't feel really good about that, but that's just kind of what I went with for now. So we'll see how wrong I am, and I'm okay with that. I already know that that's what it's going to be, a lot of wrong. As I mentioned, I'm okay with that. What are your thoughts? What are you got on your mind? 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts will close out the show. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Paul the Barber. He's calling to talk about the Raiders roster and leadership on the team and has a question about him. Here he is, Paul the Barber.
What's up, Q? Paul the Barber, man. Just giving you a call. Got a quick question for you, man. So, I'm looking over the roster, man, and I know you had mentioned a couple episodes a while back about leadership, about how this coaching staff has brought out the leadership in a lot of these veterans, you know, the Max Crosbys, the Colton Millers, guys like those. So what I'm asking is, like, you know, we have a lot of veteran leadership with Marcus Peters, Marcus Epps, Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, and all that, Devontae Adams. In your opinion, from what you've seen through training camp and throughout the whole off season, is that enough? Is that enough leadership to lead this team to the playoffs, to lead a team to make them a contender, a Super Bowl run, something like that? Because I know a few years ago you had mentioned a while back, or you had mentioned too that, you know, we went and signed that Gerald McCoy. We got KJ Wright, you know, for those veteran leadership roles. Not guys necessarily to make a big impact on the team, but just to be that locker room guy. I feel like we do have a lot of those guys, but do you think we have enough? And do you think we should go out and get one more? I'm looking at the free agent market right now, and, you know, there's names out there like Kyle Van Noy, Byron Jones. There's, you know, Melvin Ingram, Carlos Dunlap, you know, guys in that type of tier, you know what I mean? Just, you know, a veteran guy that can come in and just help the locker room, help these young guys, just to kind of, you know, help them carry themselves. Or, like I said, do we have that already? Do we have enough of that? But I'm just trying to look, you know, see what else, if there's another free agent that can bring something to this team, that can bring something to this locker room. But the way it sounds from what you've been reporting is that, like, you know, we kind of got that covered. But I was just asking you, in your opinion, do you think we need one more of those guys? So let me know, Q. Hope everything is good. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Take care. Just win, baby.
Thank you so much for the call. Great call, as a matter of fact. And, you know, I like the fact that there's veterans and there's youth. There's a lot of good blend, right? And I feel like there's good veterans in every room, you know, and guys that can help lead the charge and even help show the youngsters how to get along in the NFL, how to be a pro. You know, Max Crosby's talked about it. Him and Chandler Jones could help Tyree Wilson. Marcus Peters is going to help Nate Hobbs and Jacorian Bennett. Marcus Epps is going to help Trayvon Merrick and Chris Smith, right? I think there's all those elements are good. As I mentioned in segment number 2, I wish I had one more veteran or two on the defensive line in that room, but I put a lot of youth there. Offensive line, Colton Miller is that guy, right? Of course, you've got Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs back in the mix now, so you feel good about that leadership group. So I feel like there's just enough leaders. I would like to have like one or two more, though, on the defensive line, and that's something I talked about in segment number 2. Didn't feel 100% confident with what I was going with. And, you know, that's probably a reason why Austin Hooper will stick around in the tight end room as well, to have that veteran leader for Michael Mayer who's going to help kind of bring him along. So that's probably why, even though I released him, that's probably why he'll stick around, or one of the main reasons he'll stick around. So, Paul, thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Assassin Ghost. He says, hey, Q, the Assassin Ghost here from your boy Vinny. He said he would not rule out a Raiders trade over the next couple days. Nothing imminent, but depth of the roster creates some possibilities. So what about a trade for a linebacker? Also, could you see a possible Kenyon Drake reunion? He's younger than Abdullah and Bolden. He is great in the passing game, and if I'm not mistaken, a good special teams player. And if injury is a problem, it shouldn't be. We have Jimmy G, for Christ's sake. Love the show, love the nation, and love the Raiders. One love. That's Assassin's Ghost. And I'll talk with the Kenyon Drake first. I don't think that that's happening. The Raiders have a lot of running backs already. It was already tough to cut them down. I don't think Kenyon Drake is going to be for this Raiders roster. I think Abdullah is a guy that they like a lot, and they're going to roll with him in that same position. And Kenyon Drake, I don't even know if he'd want to come back to the Raiders, especially after the way he left. Didn't really seem like he left and was very, very happy about his departure. So the Raiders are still paying him. If there's anything to it, the Raiders are still paying him, but I don't see Kenyon Drake rejoining the Raiders at all. As far as what Vinny said, I saw that tweet from him talking about a trade, and yeah, I can see the Raiders making some trades. And when you talk about linebackers, there's two names I'll throw out there. One has been Patrick Queen, which we've all talked about a bunch, right? Until we're blue in the face. We talked about Patrick Queen with the Ravens. But also Nicholas Morrow, old friend of the team, right? Old Raider, former Raider Nicholas Morrow. This staff was a big fan of his before he left and got his money in Chicago. And I think that he is a guy that's available now. And I think that the Raiders, if they do want to make a move for a linebacker, I think that they'd go in that direction and possibly look at Nicholas Morrow, try to bring him back to the team. Because, again, this staff did like him before he left in free agency and got the money that he got from the Chicago Bears. So thanks so much for that, and just keep an eye on those two names, Patrick Queen and Nicholas Morrow. Thanks again, Assassin's Ghost. I appreciate you. Up next is a quick call from Brian in East Vegas. He's calling to talk about preseason game number 3 and the fact that I didn't see the effort, or I said I didn't see the effort that I expected to see in that game. Here he is, Brian in East Vegas.
Hey, Q, this is Brian from East Vegas. Raider fans and Raider haters can't be the same thing. It's only preseason. It was game 3 of preseason. How can people go out there and say they're not giving an effort? That's not fair of you when people are fighting for their job, and because you don't see what's going on completely, you get on the radio and say no one's giving an effort. That's not fair, and it's almost disrespectful. All right. Later. Have a good one. Go Raiders.
Brian, thank you for the call, my man. And look, I just called it how I saw it. And for me, I just didn't see the fight that I wanted to see in the Raiders on Saturday. And I think that was fair. And I think that for most part, people that saw the game, they probably felt the same way, that it wasn't, the energy wasn't there. Hell, Aiden O'Connell, I played his 1-minute interview he had with Vinny Bonsignore in the locker room following the game, and he said it was a bad game, right? So I don't think that I was too off base. I thought that similar to what we saw a year ago when there was guys that you could see that were out there just leaving it all on the field for that final preseason game trying to earn their spot, I just didn't see that. Again, I guess it's all in the eyes of the beholder. I saw a little bit from Amik. He was okay at times and was just okay. Carlson was cash. Wilkerson, he was balling. But as I mentioned on Monday, I thought that was really a showcase type event. Tyree Wilson got his first opportunity, so I didn't expect him to be fantastic. He showed, flashes. And Aiden O'Connell, again, was okay. But outside of that, the Cowboys really did whatever they wanted to the Raiders, especially the defense. And that's what I've been really critical of is the defense. Like, I've really been focusing on them. And they ran all over the Raiders, and Will Grier passed all over the Raiders, and he ran all over the Raiders. 3rd and long, they gave up. There was a lot of, and I know it's 3rd and 4th stringers. I get it. But they were also playing against 3rd and 4th stringers. So the depth, I think if anything we learned from that game, the Raiders aren't as deep as, a lot of people expected them to be. Even though they're deep at certain positions, as far as overall talent for the whole team, they're not that deep. Because the Cowboys and their 3rd and 4th stringers had their way with the Raiders. So that's really what I'm talking about. But, I'm never, ever. That's one thing you can never accuse me of is being disrespectful. I'm never going to be disrespectful. So if you took it that way, I apologize. But that is never going to be the intent of me is to say anything disrespectful to anybody. Not you, not a player, nobody. So thank you for that call. I appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Modesto Dave in the 209. Pretty lengthy text. He says, "Good morning, Q. Just finished listening to Monday's podcast. Wanted to give my 2 cents on the weekend. 1, the good. Josh Jacobs is back. Enough said. 2, Tyree Wilson's debut. Let's see why the Raiders made him their first-round pick. Hopefully it won't take long to see his impact on the field sooner rather than later. Bad? Not really. I believe the results of Week 3 was a much-needed cup of cold water to the face of the Raiders and their fans. I believe the Raiders are a better team and more talented than last year for sure. I feel we could start to see the vision of the front office starting to take shape. I feel like Game 3 was exactly what the coaches and front office staff wanted to happen. This game allowed the coaches to evaluate the bottom half of the roster and evaluate where the Raiders are as far as depth of talent on the team. This game will probably make it easier to make cuts coming up on Tuesday. The ugly? Depth. Even though I believe we are seeing the vision taking place in year 2 of the current staff, we still are not close depth-wise to compete for an NFL championship. Your depth is only as good as your weakest link. Look no further than our secondary room. Year 4 for Amik Robertson, it's the same question. Will he or won't he make the team? Until the talent in the secondary room is deep enough that cutting a Meek is a no-brainer, we'll be struggling to achieve the depth needed to contend for a championship. Again, this is nothing against a Meek, but year 4 is enough to know what the ceiling is for a player who is constantly borderline to make the team. Keep up the great work, Q. Looking forward to a better season in year 2. That's Modesto David in the 209. He said, sorry for the lengthy text. Go Raiders. And really, that was a great breakdown on that text message. That was really a good response to Brian in East Vegas. That was the answer that I should have gave, right? I mean, that's really what it's all about. Again, going back to the talent, the depth, and yeah, every year Amik Robertson is on the bubble. I kept him on this year because I've released him every year, and he keeps making it. But he's always on the bubble every single year. Like David said, there's never a time where it's like, yeah, Amik's a no-brainer, right? And I hate that for him because I like him. I think he's got the dog in him. I think he's got plenty of ability, but I just hate the fact that it seems like he's always on the bubble, and we never know, is he or is he not going to make the roster? So there's that. But thank you so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got time for one more call. Let's get this call in from Wine Country Raider. He's calling to talk about Josh Jacobs and why he's so important to the Raiders team. Here he is, Wine Country Raider.
What's up, Q? It's your boy, Wine Country Raider. And just calling to touch on the Josh Jacobs situation. Super glad that he signed and he's back, and he seems super happy and ready to ball. Just wanted to emphasize one thing that he said is, and this is why I think Josh Jacobs is so important to our team, is he said there's a bunch of new faces. He said there's a bunch of new faces that I need to get familiar with, and a lot of people that I need to prove myself to. I'm like, dude, I'm thinking, you're the rushing leader, right now, and you still feel like you need to prove yourself to people, and the guys in the locker room and stuff like that. And I just think that just shows the character of Josh Jacobs and why he's so important to our team. Is he's like, oh, I got the bag, and he's just, he's all about business. He's all about, putting a good product out there, so just wanted to touch on that. Obviously the team, like Devontae and Max, are super stoked. You can see that through social media. And, I just wanted to emphasize the character of Josh Jacobs and why I think he's just the heart and soul of our offense and how badly we needed him, and I'm just excited that we got this. Shout out to you, Q. You're my first listen every day. Keep doing it. Wine Country Raider out.
Thank you, my man, for the call. And yeah, just Josh Jacobs is leader on and off the field. There's no doubt about that. He's very important to the success of this team, and it's great that he's back in the mix, and I think it's great that he's back in the mix now, right? He's got plenty of time, in my opinion, to get ready for Denver. And I still think he's going to split some carries with Zamir. I almost called him Amik. Zamir Robinson. Zamir. Oh, man, I'm combining Zamir and Amik. Oh, that's a bad combination, right? Is he a cornerback or is he a running back? No, I think he's going to split some time with Zamir White, and, we'll see how that shakes out. But I do believe it'll be, if there's 25 total carries, maybe 15 for Josh and 10 for Zamir. And I think that'd be fair, right? Depending on the flow of the game, obviously. But, it might even be more. Maybe Josh will be ready to carry 20 times. I don't think so, but you never know. And I think that Josh is that guy that he's going to want to get as many carries as possible. So, Wine Country Raider, thanks so much for that. We'll get one more quick text in. This one's from Scott. He says, side note on Carlson, when they showed the end zone view of that kick, it was easily good for another 5 to 6 yards, which would have been a new record. I'd love to see him take that distinction away from Tucker. So he's talking about the 62-yard field goal that Daniel Carlson made. And, yeah, when he made that one, I said, dang, that thing could have been good for 68, right? And it really could have, or at least like 66. That dude had some distance on that kick. Very impressive. And, again, midseason form for Cash Carlson, fantastic. He was 3 for 3 on the day on Saturday, and he's that go-to guy. You hope that he doesn't have to go out there and kick as many field goals and kick that kind of distance, but if he does, you feel pretty confident that he's going to make them more times than he won't. So there you go. Scott, thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you, and that's all I got time for on today's show. Raider Nation for Life 420. Get your call in tomorrow. Got some more texts on the way as well. We'll have news and notes, and, of course, we'll be talking about what the actual 53-man roster, the initial 53-man roster, really looks like. Not my roster, but the Raiders' real roster that they'll have set by 1 p.m. Pacific time. So depending on what time you're listening to this, it may already be set, but we'll definitely be talking about it in a major way here on the show. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.